water purifier. I casually slip into a coma for 2 weeks because I guess the light hurt me or something. I'm told that the Brotherhood is in the middle of scrubbing the Enclave from the rest of the map, and that they could use my assistance. The thing is, at this point the most that I've interacted with the Enclave has been at their main base, which blew up. Because honestly, Liberty Prime and the other Brotherhood members killed pretty much every single Enclave soldier before I could even shoot them while we were marching. The Broken Steel DLC really focuses on lots and lots of combat with Enclave forces. And at this point, it's actually kind of welcome. If you can't tell a good story, then just let me kill a lot of shit. I was just thinking about it like a Wolfenstein or Metro game at this point. Except it's also extremely fair to note that if XP wasn't ticking at the bottom right, I would probably just run past everything, honestly. So take that for what you will. There isn't too much more to this, there's nothing extremely interesting to talk about. Liberty Prime dies due to an orbital strike and everyone is like, oh my god, this fringe group of remaining Enclave soldiers might wipe us out without our big death robot. So you're off to figure out what happened, retrieve a Tesla coil, and save Christmas. Almost the entire thing is non-stop combat. You raid a hideout filled with more Enclave than you've seen in the game until now, fight lots of security robots, and at some point the devs went, oh yeah, Deathclaws, those are really tough enemies, and decided to start throwing 8,000 cubic liters of unregulated killing machine at you.
Well, just above us is a Deathclaw research facility. There are also a bunch of robots in the facility. There are also some military types left. It
really is just fighting for a good 2+ hours straight. I mean, I guess that's good in a way, because I had over 100 stim packs for most of the mid to late game, and wound up with 50 by the end of this endeavor. Also, I started using drugs because they're cool. Like I said, the whole thing is overall pretty fun, but there wasn't much in the way of compelling storytelling for the Broken Steel DLC. I just want to know why this airbase wasn't considered the main base since the former one which housed President Eden was comparatively minuscule and underprotected. I guess that's just the breaks when you need to outdo your vanilla game to sell extra content. When all is said and done, you get scooped up by a vertibird and given a nice compliment for single-handedly decimating the Enclave. Well, okay, maybe double-handedly. You land a whole building away and watch the orbital strike that you set in motion to nuke the Enclave's own base. Then you sit in the back of the vertibird with no one talking or anything for like 20 seconds really awkwardly. Like I said, Broken Steel does its job as a combat DLC, and it doesn't compromise its objective to fulfill that gap that the game was lacking previously. It didn't make a big soap opera out of itself, and that's honestly fine by me. Alright, 1 down, 4 more DLC to go. I remember not being very fond of the Pit or Mothership Zeta, but let's see how they fare now. We'll start with Zeta because I'm fairly sure that it was the weakest of the 5 DLC. Alright, the plan here was to sit here and critique everything like I usually do, but Jesus Christ, dude. It's just not worth breaking down that way. It's basically not even a Fallout game at this point, it's just a lesser Halo. I was initially going to go on about how it's ridiculous that this little girl knows everything about how the ship functions, how the aliens don't notice her being gone, how melee weapons seem to do more to them than ranged weapons despite me having like 30 points in my melee. How the entire objective is to just overload the coolant multiple times in multiple devices over and over again. How you go out into space but the outside of the ship still has gravity. The whole thing is just ridiculous. Like, you ever just sit down to watch a movie and then you naturally start picking apart the stupid things that exist in it before you eventually realize, oh, yeah, this movie's supposed to be intentionally outlandish. That's what Mothership Zeta is in this game. There's hardly any enemy variants, you're in an alien's ship and it still manages to be boring with its infrastructure, and the whole thing logically makes no sense and doesn't even attempt to. You made a DLC about aliens coming down from space. At no point during that should the player be going, geez, how much longer is this shit? It's a B-movie in a Fallout game. I'm just waiting for Will Smith to pop out and jerk off an alien at this point and the film will be complete. I'm moving on to the Pit now. So, the Pit has you starting out by talking to this fella here who tells you that he's an escaped slave from a place surprisingly called the Pit, if you could imagine such a thing. Basically, the conditions are so poor in the Pit that people straight up biff it from some kind of mysterious pit-related disease. But fortunately, there was a cure that was discovered. Unfortunately, the slavers decide to keep it to themselves, and the slaves had to suffer from the disease. This guy learned about the cure, and then escaped with that knowledge. So now we need to steal this cure before it's perfected, whatever that means, and use it as a bargaining chip for the slaves' lives. Why the slavers wouldn't cure the slaves is beyond me, because if I were in the market for some pre-1865 action, I wouldn't want the slaves that were dying from a mysterious, incurable disease. I want the strong slaves. Wait, this is not... let's just... Anyways, the plan now is to dress up as a slave and then get into the pit and, I don't know, Russell Crowe my way out of there. My character has 12 IQ. I just like that the guy goes, I know you're thinking that it's a tough world out there, and that shit like this happens all the time, but I can free them with your help. Which, let's be honest, if my character at any point was thinking any of that, he'd laugh in this guy's face and then walk away with his super mutant buddy. Anyways, it's slave time, I guess. Gotta pop on the old certified dead guy rags and then walk down the tunnel to my certain death. The first chunk of the pit has you encountering a set of guards. They give your friend here shit for returning, and he says to you, don't worry, let me handle the talking. He proceeds to have a brief chat followed by him swiftly shooting a guy in the head. I mean, I could have handled the talking too, honestly. Either way, the plan from here is to act like a slave who didn't want to be out in the wasteland by himself anymore, and asked to be taken back into the pit as a slave. The pit actually gets its name from the Pittsburgh Bridge, apparently. And I have to genuinely compliment Bethesda here for recreating circa 2008 Pittsburgh verbatim. You can really see the effort here. At any rate, I really didn't want to play by Bethesda's puppet show for this one, so I tried to fight my way into the pit just to see how it panned out. Well, I got in and promptly got the shit beat out of me with batons. I really don't know how because I can survive landmines pretty easily, but yeah, we'll roll with it. When I woke up, I was told to meet this older lady at her house. I'm not really sure what her role is here, honestly, because she tells me that if the slaves slack off or stand around, they get their asses beat, and yet she's allowed to hang out in her house all day. It's not a hidden house or anything. She lets you know that she's under surveillance 24/7, so I don't really know how she gets away with it. This guy comes in to check on us, and I decided it was time for this gamer to rise up by utilizing close to 13 shots to the head with this actual Nerf gun. That pissed off some of the other slavers, but they gave up after I loaded the next area of the pit. So my objective now is to go out and do what is referred to as a death sentence. Nothing about this makes sense because it's explained to you that you're the one that has to save everyone. And then you're sent out to do the hardest job here because, quote unquote, if anyone sees me up close, they'll realize I'm not a real slave. Why would you risk your chances of freedom like that? But anyways, grab 10 ingots, free robots, kill trogs, all that jazz. Upon my return, I meet up with this chick again so that she can tell me the real plan this time. I'm actually going to Russell Crowe my way out of the pit. There's an arena, and the slaves that make it through the arena earn their freedom and an audience with the big boss of Camp Laszlo here. So I'm off to fight the 3 fights required to earn my freedom and then over to Asher. At this point, the whole story is unveiled as this Asher guy being a former Brotherhood of Steel member who was left for dead here in Pittsburgh. He banded scavengers together, started taking slaves, and basically made a base around this working steel mill. Then he banged this scientist so hard that he cured radiation with his baby. The plan was to suck the vaccine clean out of this baby to make more of it, so that everyone could gain immunity to the radiation. This all sounds very stupid because it is, but that doesn't stop Fallout 3. So I baby-nap this kid and hightail it out of the HQ, assist the slaves in overrunning the bad guys, and deliver the baby to Werner, where he tells me that it's now time to unleash the trogs onto the slavers. I don't know how many more slavers there are at this point, because they all seem to be dead by my hand or by the slaves that attacked with me, but sure, let's release the trogs. Oh, also, Trogs are humans that are so irradiated